Brandon Patrick George joining us today. And he's going to be getting to work with some of our ISO Symphony members today. And you get to hear a little bit of every woodwind instrument today. We have a flautist, we have a clarinet player, and an oboe player coming up today. So before we hop in, Izzy, introduce yourself and the piece you're going to be playing and kick us off.
Hi, I'm Isabella. I'm a flutist. I'm going to be playing the Dityu Sonatine.
Bravo, bravo. Do you mind if we work a little bit on that? Is that fine?
Definitely.
That's very beautiful. Thank you so much for your beautiful playing.
I'm so
Um,
excited to be here.
ah, it's me too. And it's just what year are you in school?
I'm a senior in high school.
You're a senior in high school. This brings back so many memories because this is a piece that I too played when I was in high school. Um, and yeah, it just brings back such great memories. It's a very beautiful. It's really, really challenging. So bravo to you for such a fantastic job. Um, I think a good place to start, because of course I have my own history with this piece and everyone's different, but I want to know what's difficult about this piece for you. Tell me a little bit about it. What do you like about it? Um, what's challenging about it for you, what kind of mood it's trying to convey. Just give me a little summary of those things.
Sure. Well, first of all, I love this piece, and I think um, Didier just like writing so few works, but I just love this flute sonatine and also his cello and orchestra piece,
Mm-hmm.
which is very different, but kind of the same fantasy idea. I think the main challenge for me is getting the proper 7/8 waltz
Mm.
in the beginning and just that kind of feeling. And also, measure 56, if you have the music out right now.
Yes, I do have it right
Yes,
here.
good. So the high A, just tapering that off after the double tonguing passage. I think those are
Yes,
the two main challenges.
right. Um, I think we can work on that and solve that pretty easily, I think. Um, with the high A, I think the problem, and you're talking about the one right before, is this the one before 5?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So are you using just like a regular fingering for that?
Yes.
Okay. One thing that can help you with that high A is to put the pinky on the C sharp key here. That helps stabilize the note, and also helps it sort of, it feels better. It helps it speak a little better. Could you try that actually, just to see what that sounds like?
Definitely.
Yep, just on the D flat. Hey, bravo. That's excellent. How did that feel?
Much better. I had much more control over the tapering.
Yes, it helps. It helps you control the note a little bit better. I think high A is a good note for playing loudly, but it doesn't do soft well. I mean, the flute in general just doesn't do high register soft really well. It's not your fault. It's none of our faults. It's just the nature of the instrument. But I think that fingering is really helpful. Okay. Be sure that when you do these tapers, that you think more about the air, the speed of the air, because sometimes we get very sort of fixated on the embouchure, right? Yeah, it's a thing. But the flute isn't really it's not a lip instrument, right? It's not a finger instrument, it's a wind instrument, right? And so we should be more concerned about how we use our air. So to help you with that, I'll give you one other exercise that you can do. Finger the high A just as we just practiced with the low C sharp finger, and let these weird notes fall from the lower octave. It's gonna sound out of tune and kind of weird, but that's the point, okay? So could you try fingering that and hearing this? Yeah, and very gentle, very gentle. One more time. One more time. Mm-hmm. And then I want you to increase the airspeed just ever so slightly so that you hear the next partial that kind of sounds more in tune, but not really. It's going to sound like this. Great. And now we're going to really increase the speed a little bit more so that we figure out how much air do we need for that high A. Okay, so it's going to sound like this. Try that. And now play the high A just regular. Yes. Right. So good. That's a good mistake to make, right? So find where wherever the speed of air that you had for the high A, then play with that same airspeed. So we'll do it quickly where it just sounds like. We're gonna match that same airspeed. One more time, try that. Right, and you're gonna want to turn the embouchure hole out ever so slightly. You don't want to cover too much. You really want to rely on your air. Really rely on the air, not the lips. Yes, and so this is a good way to practice so that you learn how fast does the air need to be. You can practice this on many notes. For instance, on a high E flat. So, right, or on a high F. You can practice it on a lot of different high notes, but it's really just practice so you figure out how to keep the air moving, right? Because if we tighten up here, that's usually when the note breaks, when it falls, right? You don't want the note to fall. Okay, very, very good. So you can practice that. The next thing I wanted to say, to go back to what you were talking about, this sort of 7/8 feel, right? I think it's good to just not go too slowly, right? Because he marks the eighth note equals 160, right? I think the danger is that because we want to be expressive and it's a lyrical line and there's like all of these big slurs, that we just go a little slowly. So let's start it again from the beginning. Let's see if we can play it a little bit faster to get that feel. And keep the sound open. Be careful that you don't cover too much, otherwise you end up with, right? We want a lot of sound. So we have to make sure that we keep this open, and it'll help you stay in tune as well. Good. But here, right, that's great. The beginning was great. I love the tempo. But can you keep the sound open when you get up to the higher notes? I feel like the tendency is to not support enough, but to try to compensate with the lips. Do you feel that? Yeah, yes. So you get it. And the danger with that is that it cuts off our sound. You sound beautiful. I don't want to this, but I'm exaggerating. You'll end up with something like this. Instead of, you want to try that? Just see how open you can keep the sound. Okay, great. It's so much. I feel like it's just moving a lot. I like the musical time that you take right before one. That's so beautiful. But make sure that once you come back to one, you get that tempo going, right? And be careful here. You know, I'm sharing this with you because it was also something that when I played this piece, I did the same thing. Because there are these wide intervals, right? We tend to kind of want to control it so much here, right? But we really need our air. Let's see. As you go up in a slow motion, instead of where you're controlling every note with the lips and the embouchure, right? It's just like really keep this as open. I like to describe this on the flute, the embouchure hole, as a microphone, right? And you have to hold a microphone a bit away from you to talk into it. Otherwise, we get feedback, we get a lot of noise, and we get a very muffled sound, right? So think about this is your microphone, okay? You want to keep this open because this is where most of the sound comes from on the flute. If you cover, two things are going to happen. It's going to diminish the amount of sound that you can get, the openness of the sound. It's also going to flatten the flute in pitch, right? So, because it's going to stop you from using a lot of air. And we don't want that. We want you to use a lot of air, right? It needs air. The flute needs air. Half the air is just going out in the open anyway, right? So could you try from one and just keep the sound open? Great, 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 great. Tell me what's tricky about 3 measures before rehearsal 2. What's tricky about that for you?
Not making the high B too startling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want it to be fortissimo there. It's only mezzo forte.
It is only mezzo forte. Mm-hmm. And what else?
It has to be gentle, in tune, and also speak.
Yes, yes, that's true. So there's a lot that we're trying to do in just a few measures. It's kind of overwhelming, right? I think the first thing to worry about is using your air and keeping the air moving. Okay. A good way. Do you know how to flutter tongue, by the way?
Yes.
You do.
Yes.
That's awesome. Would you mind playing from 4? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Could you go 5 before rehearsal 2 and just flutter tongue this? It takes a lot of air to get sound when we flutter tongue. So I like to practice that way because then I'm using my air more. And when I go back to playing normal, it just sounds like I'm using so much more air and it sounds better. You want to try that? Yeah, one more time. And don't shy away from the B. Just go for it. One more time. Good. And can you play it now as written? Could you play it now as written? Wow. Do you hear the difference? Do you hear that? How does that feel?
Much easier and much freer.
Much freer, right? So, and it's a very good way just to get your air moving if you're like, that's not quite the sound that I want. The sound is not open enough, right? There's just like, if we spend lots of hours practicing, but practicing the wrong way, we don't get the results that we want, right? But if we take 30 seconds to do something as you just did, to just get that air moving and saying, you know what? I'm going to get the sound open. I'm going to use my air. It's going to take me 2 seconds. You do it, and right away, you have results. Now, the last thing I wanted to say, I know we have to go on to another student shortly. In this passage, or in similar passages where the finger coordination is a little off, right? It's a little awkward, right? It's very, very awkward. Change the rhythms so that it evens it out. I like to call this like ironing out the wrinkles, right? This whole passage is so awkward from the high B. But what I would do is to make sure that my fingers are quick and coordinated, I would change the rhythms. So let's see, this one. Could you try that? So that was the G, A, E flat G, C sharp F, A, B. Could you try that? And the A cracked. So even when we practice this, we listen to make sure that the notes speak clearly. One more time. Now, can you do tia, 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 tia? One more time. Keep your air. Don't squeeze that B out, right? One more time. Now, can you do ta-da-da, ta-da-da, ta-da-da? Can you do like that? Don't cut, right? Keep the support. One more time. Now, could you play it as written? Hey, okay, that's excellent. That's excellent. How did that feel?
Much better. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just like it's a tricky piece and it's difficult, but you play so well, and it's not, none of these things are impossible for you. So I would just encourage you to use these different tools to help you improve quickly, right? Just to get the air moving, never forget to use your air. And when the finger coordination is difficult, change the rhythms. Always listen for a good sound, that you don't crack the notes, right? And that the fingers move precisely at the same time, because that's the very difficult thing about the flute, is getting the two hands to work together when they have to go in opposite directions, right? So I think that'll really help you. But you sound terrific. Bravo.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wonderful job, Izzy. All right, so next up we have a clarinetist on deck. Anthony, introduce yourself and the piece you're going to be playing for us.
Hi, my name is Anthony, and today I'm going to be playing the first movement from the Brahms Sonata No. 2 for clarinet.
Awesome. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Do you mind if we stop there?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I love this piece so much. And thank you for your beautiful playing. Yeah, I actually play off of there's the violin version that exists too. But yeah, nothing quite compares to the clarinet and the viola. And viola, everyone always seems to have like a good viola joke, but I'll go on the record and say if I could do it all over again, I probably would play the viola actually, because it's one of my favorite instruments. Like there's something about the low, rich sound like that it just has. It's so warm. And I just think after all these years of my life with these high frequencies, I would have been a lot happier with the warm tones of a viola, but it's too late. So here we are. Here I am as a flute player. Okay, so this is excellent. This is so good. You know, I wanted to stop you where we get the recap happens, where we go back to the main melody, because I was curious to see how you would play it. Initially, I thought the tempo was a little slow. How do you feel about the opening tempo?
Yeah, I feel like I was like, I know I'm probably gonna rush under pressure, so I tried to intentionally slow down a little bit. But I
You put
also
the
didn't
brakes
play this
on,
too
yeah.
fast.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like sometimes it's a little too fast and then it's out of control.
Yes, right. And it gets notey. And like then we always have to, I always tell students we have to think about like the fastest note values that we have coming later so that we don't all of a sudden slow down or that we all or speed up, right? But I thought you controlled the tempo overall. I thought that was very, very well done. Tell me, how do you feel about, I can give you some things, wind player technical stuff that we can talk about, but I think it's always better to come from a musical point. Well, tell me, how do you feel about this movement, like musically?
Um, I think it's a very like, in my opinion, very like relaxed melody. I feel like it's very serene, and it's not something overly romantic, not which is kind of a little bit unlike Brahms a little bit, but he was also interested in older music, so he definitely took influence from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when I try to play this, I just try to think of the melody as just what it is and not try to play around with it too much. Just really, the contours are beautiful and everything, and I think that I try to just play with natural accentuation of that.
Yeah, and I thought you did that very well. Okay, great. I couldn't have described it better myself, actually. So yeah, it's serene. It's kind of peaceful. I think E flat is this nice, warm, sunny key, kind of like this day that we've had. Like what? There's like blue skies. I'm looking out the window and it's like nice. And I really feel that's what I think when I hear this melody. So I think a couple things can help you achieve that a little bit better. If you go too slowly in the beginning, you do risk like sometimes wanting to compensate for such a slow tempo by maybe being musical in a way that you wouldn't otherwise, maybe some unnecessary rubato, things like that, right? I think it could just have a little bit more like we're going on a walk on a nice sunny afternoon kind of feel, right? So can we start there? Could you play it from the beginning, just taking a stroll, just a little quicker than you played it the first time? Okay, that was great. That was good. Um, Now I don't. I'm going to be a little picky here, but I will say that yes, Brahms was. He really admired older music, really like that was his thing, and was really into like counterpoint and all of that stuff. So that much is true, but you know, if you read about descriptions of like how he played, um, people say that it was like a lot of times it was kind of like improvisatory, kind of free. I think it would probably be a little bit more expressive than one would think. And I think it makes sense for someone who's going to emote, if you will, and be very expressive. They're not going to put that much on the page because they want room to do stuff, right? Okay. In the beginning, we have the first measure, which is very simple. Ya, ya, da, 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 right? Very simple. But then we have this eighth note dotted quarter figure that happens. Ta-dum, ta-dum, ta-da, ta-da, ti-ya, da, 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 right? So even in this small-ish phrase, he really goes somewhere. So could you try to express that line a little bit? I think just because he didn't write it, I don't think it would mean for you to do just, I always have this thing where I say, just because a composer wrote nothing, it doesn't mean do nothing, right? So if the line is going up and there's repetition, maybe it should be different every time. I can't tell you exactly how to do that. You'll have to make that artistic decision, right? But I would say if there's a figure that happens 3 times, as we see into measure 3, into measure 4, and then into measure 5, I would make more of that each time. Can you try that?
Yes.
I thought that was beautiful. So tell me in your own words what you did differently that time.
I tried to give more direction to the phrase. So I tried to start off a little bit less on those repeated passages and then grow to something bigger so that I have an actual point to land.
Brilliant. It's brilliant. You're so brilliant. And he didn't write that, did he? He didn't put that in, but it's in the writing, right? It's kind of like when you learn to like what people say, like read in between the lines, right? It's like, okay, he didn't tell me to drop down to pianissimo, but if I'm going to play the same figure 3 times, it's growing up in range, right? It's getting more active. So I got to have somewhere to go. So you're going to do 1 or 2 things. You're just really going to exaggerate the crescendo, or maybe do something a little bit more subtle where you just start a little less so you have room to grow. And I thought that was brilliant. That's great. Could you keep going? You want to keep going?
Yes.
Yeah.
You want me to start from the beginning again?
I would like to hear it again, but yeah, I won't stop you this time. Okay, I love the end of that phrase. That was really, really beautiful. But I do have a question for you, where you have da 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 dum, these 3/8 notes followed by a quarter. What happens in the piano part? What's happening in those measures?
It's call and response between the piano and melody, but the piano has the melody, and now the clarinet is accompaniment.
Yes. And I got the sense by the end of the phrase that you understood that. I didn't quite get it when it began. So I think the danger is sometimes when we're practicing and we don't have the pianist with us, or someone to play along with us, sometimes we shortchange notes, or we don't play them with the same expressive power as if we were really like in dialogue with someone in the same room. So you kind of have to use your imagination, right? So the last thing I want to say, the group of fives that you have going into that section, you can take your time. The piano will wait for you. You really leap into that, right? There's not a lot happening. There's no need to be hasty with that, right? Because there's nothing there. It's all you. So take your time, okay? And I want to say, when this figure begins, da 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 dum, give a bit of love to the first note. That's going to keep you from rushing. It's also going to help us have the sense that you're saying something, you're conversing with the pianist rather than ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, right? So could you try that?
Sorry, the cap just dropped. All right.
One
Yes.
more time. Yada, just a little longer on that first note. Good. But also, I think you could go a bit further with that crescendo, because now the piano is very dramatic, right? It's not all, see, so what I'm getting at here is that there are these serene moments of like it's like sort of serene melancholy, but Brahms gets kind of like moody and it changes a lot. And the piano in these three measures, if I could use one word, I would say tempestuous. Like it's kind of stormy. It's very aggressive. And then you come in again with this soaring melody 3 measures later, right? Can we do from those 8th note where you started before? And when you get to the end of the phrase, could you really give us more sound? It's not written in, there is no dynamic, but you would have to match the piano, and the piano is every bit of forte right there. Yes, great. And now can you keep going and just let this melody soar? And the last thing, we're going to stop. We have to go on, but could you continue? And I really want you to do a massive, massive crescendo, because it really gets cooking, right? So you really have to like let us as much sound as you can so that you really arrive with the piano. Can you keep going? And then the last thing I would say is that that's not a diminuendo to piano. it's really a diminuendo. It's still a diminuendo within forte, because da 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 ya da 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 ya ba bum, right? It's everything's loud right there, right? If you diminuendo to piano, it just makes no sense, right? It sounds nice when you're by yourself, but it's not gonna make sense musically when you put it together with a pianist who's just really hammering away right there. So I think what we just discussed is that even though there's a lot of simplicity in Brahms's music, a lot of elegance, very simple, it doesn't seem so like over the top, but I think he's asking you to kind of go there from time to time. And it's not always clear where it is because he doesn't mark it. But I think what he assumed was that when you hear the piano part, when you study the score, you will know how to converse with the pianist musically, and that dynamically and phrasing, you'll do all those things necessary. So just like go a little bit further. I think you have great musical instinct. Like just go for it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bravo.
All right, wonderful job, Anthony. See, I won't even make a viola versus clarinet joke because that was a wonderful performance that you just put on. All right, and last but not least, we have an oboist on deck, and we have Maria Grazia. So Maria, introduce yourself and what you're going to be playing for us.
Hello, I'm Maria Grazia, and I'm going to be playing.
Oop, Maria, you just froze. Then 1 sec. Let's see if we can get her in the chat. I see movement. I think you're good to go now.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I've been having Wi-Fi problems like all day. I don't know what that's about. I'm going to be playing Sonata in G minor by C.P.E. Bach.
Great.
Is it okay if I stop there? Because I'm sorry, I'm so out of breath. I just started working on this piece a couple days ago.
Yeah, no, of course.
Sorry,
Like, great. No.
And I was like mainly working on the first page.
Yeah, hats off to you. Like it's a really tough piece. Tell me, what do you know about this piece? Do you know much about this piece?
Well, I do know a little bit about it because my teacher gave it to me when I asked her for a new solo piece, and I'm like kind of obsessed with the Baroque era of music, and the solo piece I just worked on was Baroque, and I've never really worked on a sonata and like performed it or played it for an audition. I've always been like a concerto type of person.
Right.
So she was like, I think you should try something new. And Bach obviously has written some really nice oboe sonatas and things. So she thought that this one would be good for me. And so
Yeah.
I decided to just start it.
No, so great. So yes, this sonata is actually originally an A minor for solo flute, right? It's a flute sonata. And it's the only one that CPE wrote, but it's not surprising that he would write one because his father, J.S. Bach, wrote one for solo flute in the same key. It's very tough musically. I think both J.S. Bach and CPE Bach, but for different reasons. Excuse me. I think in this sonata, you have to be a little bit more expressive in a way because the character changes a lot. I think what will help you with that too is playing it at a faster tempo. I think it's marked adagio, right?
Yeah, it's like full.
It's marked adagio. Yeah, and we are in 3/8, right? We're in 3/8, right? So it's to the eighth note, right? So I think a little faster tempo will help. I think what I wanted to say is, when I was asking you about what you knew about this piece, J.S. Bach's solo flute piece is a dance piece, right? It's an actual partita. They're dance movements, and a bourrée, a courant, a sarabande, like these things. We kind of get the same feel in this one, but he doesn't mark it as a dance movement, right? But I think the rhythm and the harmonic language dictates that. So, and the slurs go over the bars. Do you see that? The slurs go over the bars. So we have to think in bigger phrases.
Yeah.
So could you try it to get this dance feel in 3/8 from the beginning? So yum, ta dum, tia da dum, ta dum, ta dia da. Could you try it from the beginning just a little quicker? Just a little quicker.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I lost you a little bit. We lost you there for a second. Could you try it one more time? Split the difference. I know I said quicker, but that was a little too quick. So yum, ta da, tia da dum, ta da. Can you try that? Okay, great. I think this is really good. This is really good. How did that feel for you?
Well, it was a lot easier.
It's a lot easier
also,
to play it faster, right? It takes so much air. So I think you can still split the difference as you continue to get familiar, you spend more time with it. But I think thinking the big phrases that go over the bar lines, right? And not just ta ta da yeah. That just is so slow, and we don't really sense the harmonic rhythm, because it actually, he gives us these low notes every few measures, right? Okay, great. The next thing I wanted to say is the trills that you play should generally start from the note above. I'm sure you've done that in a lot of Baroque music that you've played, right? That we start on the note from above. So make sure, and sometimes it's easier because the trill comes from the upper note. There's a like eighth note before that's probably from the upper note, then there's a trill. Okay, so that's when it's really obvious, but there's some other places where it's not obvious, and you have to really put that in there. So I would certainly encourage you to do that. The last thing I want to say is the character changes a lot. So we have this dance quality that's a little bit lyrical. Dum, ta dum, tia da dum, ta dum, tia, right? But then at the bottom of the page, you have ta ta tum pum, ta 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 tum, ta tum, right? You have that. Okay. I want to know if now we can play a bit of that section at this faster tempo, because the beginning is more lyrical, but this is a little bit more impassioned, I think, if you will, like ta ta tum pum pa pa tum pum ta 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 da ta da ta da ta dum pum. Could you try that? You froze for a bit. You there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
That's
here.
okay.
I could kind of hear you, yeah.
Okay, so could you try that section towards the bottom where you stop, where the rhythm changes and it ta ta tum pum ta ta. So we just want to make sure that whatever tempo we take, that it always has this feel, right, of motion.
Okay.
Right, that's great. I like the tempo very much. Remind me, in your part, what does he mark the dynamic for those high notes? Ta ta tum. They're forte, no?
Yeah, forte.
Yeah. I think like really doing that will like make your life so much easier, actually. I know it's hard and it's really, really high, but I think the advantage is that like a composer actually allows us to play in the high register as wind players and to play loud. That's like a dream. Like we all want to be able to play in the high register and play loud. It's so hard to play high and play quietly, and then our high notes don't speak, right? They don't speak. It makes our lives so difficult. So could you try it and really play those notes forte? It's also going to make the lower notes sound quieter without having to be so quiet.
Mhm.
Great, great. That worked. Okay. It worked. It spoke that time. It came out. That was awesome. So, I think sometimes as wind players, when we don't use our air, when something is difficult and we're nervous, I know for me as a flute player, when I'm nervous, I don't use my air in the same way as that I would just practicing on my own. So you really have to encourage yourself to really go for it, particularly in the high notes. And I would also say this is in general for all wind players, pick a tempo that will always best allow you to be musical and expressive, and that helps bring the piece to life without making things too difficult for yourself. I think sometimes if we go too slowly and it makes things really tough, we don't feel free musically and we tend to struggle. And that's not really, it doesn't help anyone, right? It doesn't help you feel good about playing. It doesn't help the audience feel at ease with the performance. So always feel free to pick a tempo that allows you to really be as expressive as you can be. But that also helps really bring the composer's writing to life, and allows you to use your air, because we all ultimately, everything that we do as wind players is about using our air. So, but yeah, I think we should leave it there. I think that was a lot of information in a short period of time. But I'm so impressed with your playing. You have such a beautiful sound, and that you're playing this incredibly challenging flute piece, like on the oboe. It's just like mind blowing to me. So,
Thank you.
Beautiful job, guys. So folks on the call, just hang back for a second while I close out the stream. But thank you everybody who tuned in, and thank you for continuing to show support for these students who the entire year have been engaging in remote rehearsals. Several of them are actually mentors to younger students as well, and just showing out for them. They continue to show up every week, and this is just a testament to the work that they do.